Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
You got Luke.
Luke, we're joined this morning at Autodesk University 2018 by Nick Ellington of Splash, Making a Better World award winner at the Design and Manufacturing Awards this year. Congratulations on the big win.
That had to be pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks, James and Luke. It was a great experience to be welcomed by Autodesk and the Autodesk Foundation this week.
So was it expected or unexpected?
It was a surprise.
Because I know when we were talking to the folks that were running it, they kind of kept you guys. You like knew a little bit that maybe you were on a list, but not that you necessarily won. So you didn't know you won until you were here. Is that right?
Yeah. To be invited to the dinner, the awards dinner,
Okay.
I think kind of might have
It
given
tipped you a little bit.
a little hint there.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So could you tell us a little bit about what being the Making a Better World award winner is, as well as a little bit about what Splash does?
Yeah. So I'll start with just a quick introduction on Splash.
Sure.
We are an international NGO that's focused on bringing water, sanitation, and hand washing infrastructure, as well as behavior change programs to public schools in major cities across Asia and Africa.
Okay.
I saw, and I might have a question in here about that, but I think you were in 8 countries?
Yes,
Something like that? What,
that's
can you
correct.
tell us what 8? Do you know?
Yes, I
Let's
do
see.
know.
We're gonna count
I
them.
know.
Let's see.
It's like a test here.
So in Africa, we're in Ethiopia. And then in Asia, we're in Nepal, India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, China, and Thailand.
There you go. You got all 8. Very good.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
My boss is going to be really happy.
Could you tell us specifically what it is that you do for Splash then?
Sure. Well, my title is Wash Infrastructure Manager.
I like that.
So that means...
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that means I head up our engineering and infrastructure teams globally. So that's the design, installation, and ongoing maintenance for all of our infrastructure that we install.
So how big of an organization is Splash?
Yeah, we're just about 55 people.
Okay.
globally.
Wow.
And 55 people in that many countries. My guess is you guys wear a lot of hats, and they're
Oh,
probably
yeah.
doing
Yep.
a lot of late evenings and a lot of extra
Yes.
hours.
So just earlier this week, I started off the week with a 6 a.m. call.
Okay.
And then ended that day with an 11 p.m. call. So
Sounds
lots
pleasant.
of coordination.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that mean you have a lot of travel to Asia
Yes.
and Africa as well then?
Yeah. So we have offices in each of the major cities where we work with local staff, but we can't do our work without being there in person and coordinating in person and seeing these sites.
Okay, so you said you design these. Do you guys also manufacture these products as well, or is that something that you're outsourcing and then it's getting delivered to these locations?
Yeah, so that's actually something that the Autodesk Foundation has really helped us on.
Okay.
Is one of the most underappreciated and undervalued piece of our infrastructure is actually the access points. So a lot of people are really excited to hear about how we treat the water, or there's a lot of funding, thankfully, going into sanitation now, because that's in the past that's been really underappreciated and underfunded. But we've worked with the Autodesk Foundation to really look at the piece of infrastructure that the children actually touch and interact with, which is the stations and the taps themselves.
Okay.
Which so far have been pretty terrible. They break all the time.
Okay.
And then it doesn't matter what filtration you put on.
Right.
If they can't use it, right?
If the tap is broken, then you lose access.
Okay.
So the foundation has linked us up with some really great design professionals and some financial support to really walk us through, and partnering with them, we lended our 10 years of experience working in these schools, and then they brought in the design and manufacturing expertise. So now, instead of these monstrous concrete covered in algae and mold stations with broken taps, we can actually roll out consistently manufactured plastic stations at a global scale that are pre-plumbed with the taps pre-attached, and we can actually get the best tested taps on there to ensure access in the long term.
That's great.
That is. So we mentioned the 8 countries that you're
Yes.
currently in, and you're reaching 430,000, maybe more kids at this point with
Yeah.
water, and your goal is 1 million by 2023.
Yes.
So does that mean that you expand into additional countries, or does that mean you're focusing in these ones and growing that number, or both?
Yeah, so we're actually going to reach that number by focusing on 2 main cities. So that's Kolkata, India, and Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Okay.
What's the second one?
Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Okay.
Yeah. So our goal there is to reach every single public school in
Wow.
each of those cities within the next 5 years.
It seems like a big undertaking
Well,
to me.
it just makes me makes me feel bad about all the things that I work on and the fact that you're solving all these amazing problems.
Well, as Nick's talking about this, I'm sitting here thinking like, well, we work for Autodesk, and I mean, kind of that ties us to the foundation, maybe. So maybe we can claim to be good people too.
when I brush my teeth in the mornings now, I'm gonna
turn
start
the
shutting the
water
water
off?
off.
Yeah, that's good
I
idea.
have to.
So you mentioned that those 2 cities are your biggest focus. Do you have another country that you're looking into getting into, or is that just not even in the plans at this point?
So, like we were talking about earlier, we are a pretty small organization. So we want to really focus on doing those cities well, but also we're committed to those 430,000 existing students that we serve every day to make sure that we transition sustainably to local service providers and to full support by their local government agencies.
So you had mentioned how much the foundation is helping you guys and all the connections they've helped you make. How did you originally get connected to the Autodesk Foundation? What's the story there?
I think it's been conversations ongoing for a few years
Okay.
now, and then just us telling our story and our need for good design, because I'm a wastewater engineer. I
Okay.
am not a product designer at all. I've never manufactured anything before.
Okay.
And just really expressing our need for professional design services and for Autodesk software, and the foundation has been so generous.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
So you mentioned parts breaking and therefore filtration doesn't really matter at that point. What are some of the other biggest problems that you have to overcome?
Yeah. So in Kathmandu, where we are working in a few hundred schools across the city, we've actually found that the water there is the worst that I have ever seen, because there's naturally occurring ammonia deposits underground.
Which is not good.
Not
See?
no,
Impressed?
See, and you're not a wastewater engineer, and you know that.
Yeah, it's not so tasty, that ammonia. But as you might know, ammonia is a tiny particle, tiny molecular structure, so it's very difficult to filter out.
Okay.
So we have to throw in some pre-filtration on top of our normal filter solution.
Okay.
And-
So it's different in each location.
Absolutely. The water chemistry changes from city to city, so we have to design for the specific sites where we work.
Okay. Okay.
That must just be terrible, because you probably get to a point where you think you have it figured out,
Yeah.
and then something else is getting through.
Yeah, and we do ongoing water testing, so we're always on alert for seasonal changes as well.
So you mentioned that you're working with all these schools. Is this something that you kind of had to convince them, these schools, hey, you need to make sure that these young children have access to clean water? Was it a convincing, or were they really receptive to basically outsiders potentially coming in and putting these things in place to help their kids? So what was that process like to get connected to these schools?
Yeah, so again, it's a mix. But I think what's really key there is presenting it as a partnership.
Okay.
We cannot have long-term success if we go in and say, here you go. Here is this filter system, here's some water storage tanks, here you go, and walk away. What we found a lot of success in is actually getting the schools to co-invest with us at the onset, and then for the next 5 years of ongoing O&M.
Okay.
So that's sometimes that's financial co-investment, and sometimes, we ask them, hey, if you can raise funds or purchase the water storage tank, we'll cover the rest.
Okay.
And that co-investment and that recognition of value has really led to some success in the long term.
Yeah, because at that point they have some skin in the game. They've actually contributed to this and feel like they're a part of this. They're not just receiving this charity. And
right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going a little off script here.
Okay, go.
By
Yes.
a little, I mean completely. So, have you ever thought about lending your expertise in these areas to disaster relief or things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that is, I think, a severe and worsening need that
Right.
we're going to see more and more. The exciting thing about these stations that we've designed with help from the Autodesk Foundation is that we think that these are perfect for disaster relief settings, for refugee camps, for displacement camps, because since they're made out of plastic, they can be deployed and redeployed rapidly. We found that after the Nepali earthquake in 2015, we had installed hundreds of fiberglass stations at that point. And in the earthquake, we had several of our schools be destroyed or deemed structurally unsafe. And what we were able to do is just unbolt these stations from those schools and install them in other schools that were inspected and deemed safe. And as the students who went to the destroyed schools were then transferred to the still standing schools, we had an increased demand on our stations, so they went to use almost immediately. And that's just something that you can't do with the existing concrete and tile stations.
Right.
And was the initial design for that meant to be modular, or that just because you changed from this big, heavy, it was just a product of, the need, and we could disconnect, pick it up, and move it. It wasn't designed for that intent, but...
Yeah, I think the original intent to jump from concrete to fiberglass was, we didn't have to have skilled labor laying that concrete, waiting for it to cure. Concrete's going to be expensive, and then a lot of quality control to make sure it's the right height, that you're getting straight lines. With fiberglass, we actually had a more consistent product being handmade still locally by local vendors.
So these are locals making the
fiberglass.
Right.
That's even a cooler
That
story.
is.
That you're. I was just assuming you were like drop shipping these.
No.
So
Right,
in every
exactly.
country, you're having local labor that you're employing to build these.
Yeah.
That's even a great story.
But it's hand-laid fiberglass, which at the maximum each vendor was making 5 to 10 stations per week.
Okay.
But to really achieve our goal of every single public school in Addis Ababa and Kolkata, that rate would never cut it.
Yeah.
So then that gave us the opportunity to redesign these to be made out of plastic in factories at a much higher rate.
Gotcha.
And the exciting thing there is that in that redesign, we've actually built in behavior change nudges.
Okay.
So we brought in behavior change experts who have worked in the grocery industry,
Okay.
actually. So thinking through product placement, colors, and grocery store layout to improve consumer access to those products. And we use some of those same design features and behavioral science into this new
To
design.
encourage usage from the kids and the
Yeah.
people using these. That's great.
Yeah.
So, could you give me an idea of the breakdown on workload? So, how much of is it done in the office? How much is on site? I know there's 55 of you, so I'm sure it's all over all the countries at one time. What's that look like?
So, in the beginning, when we first partner with a site, we our field staff go and visit that site to see, okay, what is the existing infrastructure there? What are the actual current student and staff numbers? So to calculate our peak demand for the infrastructure on the site. And then we return to the office. Our infrastructure team starts to lay out, okay, this is how many stations we're going to need. This is how many toilets we're going to have to build to meet our target ratios. And then we'll create a budget, and then we'll find contractors to actually do the install and construction work.
Okay.
What's crazy is when I was first looking through the story and learning about why you won this award, I just was picturing, oh, they're going and they're putting up some water fountains, and that's cool. They're getting clean water there. And it's just so much more that you're involved in. It's crazy.
No, sometimes I wish it was just water.
I'm sure.
because
Be a little bit easier,
that's
maybe.
a little bit easier. You just cut the pipe plug in and then test the water, and you're good. But when we get into sanitation, which is completely necessary to see the full impact of improved health and educational outcomes, every site is different, and you're doing pretty heavy new construction because you're building new buildings, because many of these schools do not have enough toilets.
So how many of these 8 countries have you personally visited?
So I've been in China, Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and Ethiopia.
Okay, so almost all of them.
Almost.
Okay. Is the goal to get to all of them at some point?
I would hope so.
Yeah. So a couple last questions. So for the listeners watching and anybody that hears this later, how could they get involved with either your organization or just, personally being like shutting the water off when you're brushing your teeth? So
There you go, Luke. Do your part.
So how can the listeners get involved and either help out or just some general advice about, water consumption and usage?
Yeah, well, I think one thing is just foster that curiosity about what is going on for the majority of people in the world. So thinking about and reading about what's happening in India, Sub-Saharan Africa, in some of these places, to read about the mass urban migration moving to the cities, and thinking through what's going to happen in these cities when over half the world currently lives in a city, and 3 million more people are moving every single week to cities. So first, I would recommend just learning more about the impacts and the need for good design and really new design. Okay. And then finding ways to get into that.
And your website, if
Yes.
folks wanted to check out what you folks do, is
splash.org.
Okay. Well,
Keeping it simple.
that's easy.
Yeah.
All right, so we can't be all business here. So could you tell us a little bit about what your favorite part of Autodesk University is? And I know it's the last day, but do you have anything else on the schedule other than this amazing interview that you're looking forward to?
So it has been amazing to see the advances in generative design. I think that is just
Everybody's
fascinating.
loving generative. Do you think you guys could potentially leverage generative, or do you think that might be something that you might not be able to, considering the labor force that you're using locally and their ability to make stuff?
I wish, because that'd
be pretty awesome.
The aesthetic is so neat, and then just the ability to reduce weight in shipping, I think is a huge benefit. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, if you had to pick your favorite country that you visited,
The others won't feel bad.
I don't think I can pick a favorite.
Okay.
No, they all have amazing things. Ethiopia, the music and the culture is amazing, and you can get macchiatos after lunch.
I think I want to go now.
Yeah.
Luke sold. All right, so thank you for joining us today, Nick. Again, that's Nick Ellington of Splash. And check out their site at splash.org to learn a little bit more about what they do.
All righty.
Hopefully you're enjoying your time at Autodesk University 2018. Congratulations on the big award win, and hopefully we see you back here again in the coming years.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nick.